What's up, everyone? Bitcoin forming an epic ascending broadening wedge. What that means for the bull market that is to come, as Bitcoin right now pounding on the doors of $10,000. We're going to talk about that in this video. Welcome to Crypto Capital Venture, where we zoom out on the charts. We give you the healthy perspective you need to approach these crazy Bitcoin markets. Bitcoin, as you see, knocking on the doors, just 19% away from potentially slamming down the doors of the Bitcoin bull market. Everybody waiting. And in this video, I want to talk about the ascending broadening wedge that you see on the screen. And before we do, I've done a lot of videos as of recently really talking about the similarities of where Bitcoin is now leading into this halving, this white line, and where it was in that last Bitcoin bull market, or leading into the last Bitcoin bull market and that last halving. So many similarities. We've dissected it so much, but in this video, what I really want to talk about is what we have on the screen, and that is the broadening wedge. And this is on the weekly chart. This crazy looking megaphone that you see, this could be Bitcoin screaming its way into the bull market that everybody is waiting for. So we're going to talk about that. I want to look at real quick on this weekly oscillator, because we're going to compare Bitcoin to what's forming right here. We're going to compare it to what happened coming out of this bear market and going into these higher highs and higher lows into our June swing high, right? We have a couple ascending broadening wedges right here. You see them on the screen. But what I just really quick want to point your attention to is the similarities in terms of Bitcoin momentum. Not only on the weekly did we see support really right around that 40 line on the weekly chart, such an important area on this RSI, but right now Bitcoin consolidating on this RSI as we form this broadening wedge, similarly to how Bitcoin consolidated at the same level on the RSI back in April, right before Bitcoin saw some massive gains going into June, July swing highs. As you remember, even the stock RSI has some similarities. We talk about on the stock RSI not as critical when you see it in the overbought zone. It can hang up there for a while. What's really healthy is this RSI, this middle momentum oscillator, the slower moving momentum oscillator. And you can see right now a ton of room left for the upside for what may be to come for Bitcoin. And I think that's very important to note. Lastly, we're also getting an upswing. We know that end of January, so we had this MACD cross above this signal line on the MACD. We have some upward momentum there on the weekly chart for Bitcoin. Still, again, ton of upside in play for Bitcoin in terms of that momentum. Now, if we zoom in on the charts a little, here we are on the daily chart. As you can see, Bitcoin right around 19% away from this longer term upward trend line. That's where we're shooting for. That is a key area, $11,800 or so. Many people eyeing that area to see if Bitcoin sees resistance or if Bitcoin can power through that area. Now, the broadening wedge that you see on the screen is incredibly important, and I want to talk about the technicals behind a broadening wedge. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is pulled from the pattern site, and this is an incredibly awesome site if you want to learn technical analysis. This is Bulkowski. I've learned so much from him. I've learned so much from this website, but a lot of what I'm going to say right now is taken from his approach. Now, some facts about this broadening wedge, this ascending broadening wedge that actually is very bullish in my opinion. Number one, for upward breakouts, the best performing patterns are those with an intermediate term between 3 and 6 months move leading into a pattern. So what we're looking at here is something similar to that. This is a midterm move as we lead into this broadening wedge. And one thing I just do want to chart on this screen, I think I have a chart on another screen, is this, the inverse head and shoulders that Bitcoin was setting up as we sort of entered into this uptrend that Bitcoin is in right now, right? And we did a lot of talking about this on the channel. A lot of people were tracking this. We have our left shoulder, we have our head, we have a rejection here at the right shoulder after we have this right shoulder at the neckline rejection, come back down, and then finally Bitcoin breaks up, right? So it's an inverse head and shoulder leading into this rising broadening wedge. Now, if we zoom out in the charts, I just wanted first illustrate the strength of Bitcoin in these crazy looking broadening wedges, right? As we know, Bitcoin, as it entered into that last swing high, Bitcoin coming out of the bear market hit its first broadening wedge back here in April. And from that area, we entered another broadening wedge. We had upward momentum and Bitcoin saw almost 200% gains. Now, this broadening wedge, even more epic for Bitcoin right now. We have 3 touches to the bottom trend line here. We have our first 2 touches early on. This was earlier in the year in January. And some things to note. Basically, when price touches the bottom trend line for the 3rd time and then begins rising, in this regard, is a buy signal. I want to say, and this is noted on Bukowski's website, that is a risky trade. This is a risky move for anybody. I just want to say that. So we have 3 touches. Here's the 3rd touch. That's a buy signal. I'm not sitting here giving you financial advice to buy, especially since we got a bounce. That's nice confirmation, because there are some other stats involved here. One of those stats being that basically 52% of the time, there will be a downward move. Now, to me, with historical data suggesting that Bitcoin performs well in uptrends that lead into a broadening wedge, that actually is really bullish. 52% of the time, this isn't a bearish pattern where you're getting a 70% breakout to the downside. And 81% break out in the same direction as that leading to the pattern. And they tend to outperform reversals. So what that means is we had this inverse head and shoulders with upward momentum, right? We had this upward momentum, and 81% of the time, if you have upward momentum going into an ascending broadening wedge, the breakout will be upwards. So 52% failure rate in a bearish way, but 81% success rate if momentum is gearing upwards. Those are pretty bullish stats for me. I do want to say, again, very risky, but all of this happening simultaneously where we get our 50 moving average cross above the 200 moving average. And if we scroll back here, I want to point this out because it's important. If we scroll back here to where this first broadening wedge that started it all out of the bear market happened, same exact thing, 50 moving average cross above the 200 moving average. I imagine this 3rd touch or so at the bottom of this broadening wedge, people probably getting nervous. Is this going to fail? Is Bitcoin going to break back down? And it didn't. We had continuation. It was just the beginning of almost 200% gains. And we're in an extremely similar area right now for Bitcoin. 50 moving average cross above the 200 moving average and a huge ascending broadening wedge. And yes, really the upper trend line right now, confluent just about with this yellow line, this longer term trend line. A lot of potential resistance up there in that $11,800 to $12,000 area. And if we zoom out on the charts, and this is where it just comes together beautifully, and I'm zooming all the way out here, and this is the daily chart. I want to show you the Fibonacci retracement. This is how it comes together. The Fibonacci retracement paints such a beautiful picture in terms of market cycles and resistance. It is the doorway to the bull markets, everyone. I talk about it all the time. And if you've been watching this channel, you pretty much already know $16,000 down to around $13,000. Bitcoin once again approaching potentially that area. If this ascending broadening wedge breaks to the upside, Bitcoin could be testing that area very quickly. We could be testing those bull market doors very quickly if Bitcoin makes a break to the upside. So there's a lot to watch out for on these charts. We can cruise over to the 4-hour. This is a shorter term. You see all the craziness happening in this rising wedge here. But one thing to note, and I think this really brings it in, which is Bitcoin on the shorter time frame from this swing high here to our swing low here in a potential resistance area, 9,900 up to around 10,100 or so. Huge resistance area, and this is what to look out for in the short term. If you're watching Bitcoin tonight, it's Sunday evening right now, 7:14 p.m. Going into tomorrow morning, we are hours away from seeing if Bitcoin is getting ready to actually make a really large move, breaking through 10,000. Actually, right now as I record this video, Bitcoin breaks 10,000, and the question is, will there be rejection at this psychological barrier confluent with this resistance area, Fibonacci, with a swing high extending back around 5 days to February 18th and a swing low February 19th. And here we are, hours away now from Bitcoin, once again testing $10,000. What's going to happen? All I know is I really do like this setup. I really like how this broadening wedge looks on the screen, especially if you look historically at Bitcoin and how it has performed in other similar scenarios coming out of a swing low, mainly the bear market low. We're coming out of another swing low, but this was a higher low, a more healthy momentum indicator for Bitcoin. But here we are now testing some really, really important areas. Hours away, I truly believe that hours away, I think we're going to really get a good idea of what kind of momentum Bitcoin has. I'm really curious to see what you think. How are you making out there? I appreciate you coming by. If you're here and you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me. The like button, you know that means a lot to me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I will see you in the next video. Have a good day and God bless.